Well, welcome. My name is Elena Gaona. I am the Director of Communications for Catholic Climate Covenant. Just a reminder, a lot of our conference has been webinars. This is a meeting, so please mute yourself so that the person who's speaking can be really heard. So welcome to the Communications and Media Breakout session of the Laudato Si in the U.S. Catholic Church Conference Series, circa 2021. Bienvenidos. And if we can move to the next slide, please. Thanks to donations from Covenant supporters, we're able to offer Spanish interpretation. So if you click on the bottom of your screen on the world icon, then you can switch to Spanish. Si necesita traducción, puede hacer clic en el abajo de su pantalla, en el icono del mundo y escoger español. And we'll go to the next slide. So if you want to be in the Spanish room, just rename yourself ES because we will be having breakout rooms and that way you can remain in the room with the interpreters. Y si vamos a tener salas pequeñas en esta reunión, así que si quiere estar en el cuarto en español, por favor cambie su nombre que tenga ES antes de su nombre y así nos quedamos en el cuarto en español. Next slide, please. We also have captions if you want to see what people are saying, captions, sorry. And just you can switch that on at the bottom and show subtitles. So now our opening prayer is a prayer for our earth from Laudato Si. Next slide, please. And please follow along. And all-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain, awe at the expense of poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with the awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen.
Amen.
And I'd like to continue our session by acknowledging that our conferences sponsoring organizations, Catholic Climate Covenant and Creighton University, are on the Kashtunk and Piscataway lands and Omaha lands, respectively. We'd like to invite the audience to share in the chat the name of the indigenous peoples on whose land you reside. Finally, we're a room full of communicators, so please use hashtag LSUS21 to post about this session and the conference. Now it's my pleasure to present our co-track leaders, two greats in our field who said yes when asked if they'd help us figure out what role communications can play in moving us all to do a better job of caring for creation. Bill Mitchell is CEO and publisher of National Catholic Reporter, and among many accomplishments, he helped start Earthbeat, which does a wonderful job of keeping us informed on Catholic and others' efforts related to climate change and care for creation. And he has helped us throughout these weeks to stay purposeful with wisdom and encouragement and joy. Stephanie Clary is the digital editor at U.S. Catholic. In 2017, she coordinated the Diocese of Burlington's Year of Creation and the Action for Ecological Justice Conference at St. Michael's College. And it's been invaluable to get her national as well as diocesan insights throughout these past weeks we've worked together, as well as having her calm and tech-savvy presence. So I'll hand it over now to Bill and Stephanie.
Thank you, Elena. I think Bill and I would both say it's been such a thrill to work with this awesome group, and we're so excited to have you all here with us today. Just a quick rundown of what we will do together today in this time we have. There's a survey link that you were sent out ahead of time. So some of you may have already taken this survey just to kind of get a feel of who we're in the room with today and what context we're coming from. If you have already taken that survey, you don't need to take it again. But if you didn't have a chance to take that survey yet, we are going to drop the link in the chat box. And if you could just take it, it'll take like 1 minute. And then we'll look at the results together shortly. We have a Creation Care Communicators guidebook we'll be going over together. That was the work of this group. We'll have some time for small group discussions. We thought they might be a little smaller than they're going to end up being. So hopefully that's still a great time for you all to share with a bit smaller group than this main room. We'll get a break right around the 1 hour mark. Then we'll come back for a panel discussion with 4 panelists from the working group that has been planning this presentation, and time for Q&A during that panel discussion. Some options for how to stay connected after this conference, especially for communicators to share ideas moving forward. And then there will be a presentation about a Laudato Si in the US Catholic Church media campaign. So a lot of exciting stuff on the agenda, and we hope that you'll be able to stick around for all of it. I'm going to want to hand back to, oh, go ahead, Bill.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. I just wanted to welcome everyone and to make the point that we're now in an age where we are all communicators one way or another. This is no longer the purview of journalists or communications officials. We all have platforms to share the good news, and especially the good news about what's happening with creation care, as well as some challenging news. Why don't we turn now to Peter? Have we got a sense of how the returns are rolling in on the survey?
Yes, they're coming in fast and furious. So I wonder if we should wait just a minute before I start to put the results up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Peter, can you hear me?
Yes.
Peter, could you check if my name is Antoinette Moore? Nothing seems to be wrong with my video on this end. I don't know if
we're not seeing you, but
I'm at the top. I'm above Elena.
We see your name. We just don't see your image. So why don't you try adjusting your?
I tried. Okay, it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. I did try. I know how to do it. Yeah. Okay.
We'll follow your voice in the meantime.
All right. Thank you.
Stephanie, why don't do you want to or Elena begin just going through this?
I only suggest that because when we started this call, there were 30 responses, and now there are 96 responses. So they are coming in.
And I see 182 people in the room. So I think it's a good idea to wait a bit.
Yeah, just a reminder for anyone who just came in, we just dropped a link to a survey in the chat. Maybe, Peter, we can drop it again to make sure everyone takes it. And we will get to that in the agenda as soon as we finish the guidebook. So that'll give people a little bit more time too. So I'll move in.
While Elena is presenting the guidebook, if you want to take a minute to take that survey, and then after we discuss the guidebook, we'll come back to look at those results.
Good.
So we have here the cover for our Creation Care Communications, a guidebook for communicators. If you see there's the link at the bottom, so you can go to it now. It is a guidebook that is in draft form. So how we got here is we invited all these great communicators to talk for weeks to present and to see what were we going to say at the conference and what contribution could communicators give to this. And we started to see a lot of the same patterns. So also in the survey, when we get the results, I think that we all kind of have obstacles, we need resources, we need like strategies. And so all of this started to feel like very repetitive, and like maybe we could put it all together in some great guidebook, and that's how this happened. So all of the people in the working group, which you'll learn about at the end, it's about 17 people. I think we dropped to about 15 by the end. contributed to the guidebook. They're all communicators we have in this group, a working group, editors, reporters, bloggers, writers, digital folks, and everyone came at it from either nonprofits or media, and so contributed like the best resources, the best strategies, the best talking points. And we figured out that maybe we could organize it by objectives. Like, what do you want your communications to do? And so that's how we ended up with this. So if we go to the next slide, you see, that's how we arrived to the guidebook. And the outline is we have an introduction, like a general inspirational introduction, then a how-to for how to use the guidebook. And then it starts with general talking points and strategies and key audiences. And then these are the 7 objectives. These are the objectives that our groups naturally arrived at. It seemed to be buckets that also seem to be repetitive. These are not by any means the only objectives out there. So we hope that the guidebook will inspire your communications. And so if you have different objectives, that you could look at these chapters and say, this is how this was accomplished, so maybe that'll help me. So the 7 chapters are articulate the theology and spirituality of creation care. That was number 1. 2, emphasize the connection of creation care with ecology, the dignity of human life, and the call to love one's neighbor. 3, assist your bishops and leaders. 4, inspire green living. 5, increase and improve the teaching of creation care in Catholic schools. 6, increase the number of Catholic organizations that are divesting or taking other concrete action to influence fossil fuel companies. And 7, advocate for policy changes at local, state, and federal levels. So when you look at each chapter, if we go to the next slide, they're organized by, it starts with an inspirational quote, usually like from a pope or a bishop, someone who we would see as Catholics as a leader. And then there are case studies, so stories with a problem and solution from other communicators. Not just inspirational stories of great things that Catholics have done, but that communicators have done and attack the problem with a specific example. And then for each chapter, there are specific talking points, strategies, and teachings. After the 7 chapters, you see an amazing list of resources at the end. And either of those resources, you can grab talking points from teachings. It's all there together. So Bill Patnaud runs a blog, catholicecology.net, but he wasn't able to be here with us today. So I believe that Bill or Stephanie are going to walk us through 1 or 2 of the chapters.
Yeah, I will walk us through chapter 2 quickly. I'm just going to share the guidebook screen. And then when I am finished, Bill will quickly share about one of the other chapters. Because each chapter they have the same structure like Elena mentioned, but due to their content, some of them are a little different. So the 2 chapters we're going to share with you today are 2 that are a bit different in the way they are put together. So at the top of the guidebook, this conversation is happening in the chat, but just to reiterate, you do need, it's case sensitive. So if you're using that bit.ly link, make sure you're using the capital letters as well. Otherwise it will not work. So here we are, here's the link again at the top, a linkable table of contents. So we're going to go down to chapter 2, which is emphasizing the connection of creation care with ecology, dignity of human life, and call to love one's neighbor, otherwise known by a lot of us as Catholic social teaching. So what you won't find in this chapter is a summary of what Catholic social teaching is, because you can find that elsewhere. But what you will find is communication specific guidance. So the 2 case studies are about 2 situations from a comms perspective of something that was effective. The St. Kateri Conservation Center has utilized social media very well to reach lots of people with a very limited budget. So you can read about what they've done here. One of the things we will be adding as we continue to work on this document is contact information for each case study. So if you want to learn more about this little blurb, you have someone you can reach out to. The second case study here is about a project with US bishops that just used really simple, accessible language for people to understand what's going on. And so while the project itself is something that might be discussed in one of the other breakout sessions of this conference, what we're really interested in is that persuasive angle, that accessibility of simple language is what makes the communication piece really stick out. Then there's strategies and talking points. So again, instead of saying, here's what Catholic social teaching says, and here's where Care for Creation fits in with that, you can find that in some of the resources at the end. But what you'll find in the talking points are things like, if you know you're speaking to a group that's a little hesitant about Laudato Si, maybe they're not excited about digging into Laudato Si, but they get excited about Pope Benedict XVI, use Laudato Si, go to the footnotes, find a different primary source that isn't Laudato Si, and use that when you're talking to this group. They might be more willing to engage. So you'll find strategies like that rather than the actual teachings. Basically, whatever is in the strategy section is shortened in the takeaway section. So if you have less time, you want to read something really quick. And then the resources for each section are at the end. They're not at the end of each chapter. So they're more like in a library or an index at the end. I'm going to hand over to Bill now, who is going to talk a little bit about the divestments chapter, which is a little more technical and less theological.
Stephanie, maybe you could scroll down on your screen to
sure.
chapter 6. Just
Yep.
stay there. This chapter really involves three main topics: the options of divestment, engagement, or impact investing. Of course, impact investing in firms that are pursuing alternative forms of renewable energy, is something that can be done by people or organizations that are divesting, as well as organizations that have chosen to engage by remaining invested. One of the barriers to communicating about these topics is the complexity of it. I speak from experience because NCR just went through the process of divesting, and I can tell you that the dual challenges of being as careful about our financial holdings to enable us to do the work we do, at the same time that we're doing our best to live up to Catholic social teaching with where we invest, it's an interesting challenge. I think for communicators of all sorts, it's not simply journalists who are writing about this topic, though I'm glad to see Brian Rowe, our environmental correspondent, in the room with us today. But you might be a member of the parish council and you're writing about the option of what the parish might do with its endowment for a particularly large parish. If you're a diocesan paper editor like Ed, who we're going to be hearing from shortly, you might be writing about a decision by the bishop involving diocesan funds. You know, you face a number of different approaches. You may, in some cases, be writing about simply to explain what the issues are. In other cases, you may be trying to persuade. But what we've tried to do in this section is give you a couple of examples. The first case study example involves the question of engagement. We use what the University of Notre Dame has done. Notre Dame has chosen, unlike some other universities, to pursue engagement. They want to stay in the discussion with fossil fuel companies, unlike Georgetown and Dayton, for example, which have divested. And then we use our own situation at NCR. We just announced a couple of weeks ago our decision to divest. I thought it was an interesting case study because it gets to the issue of writing about one's own organization, which demands a special effort to be independent and to try to put yourself in the shoes of readers other than your own organization members. Why don't I leave it at that for now? Elena, I think it's back to you.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you,
Slideshow
Stephanie.
while you talk.
So as you can see, we tried to make the guidebook a universal resource for communicators. Some communications departments are one person. Some, like Bill said, are like experts in covering the issue. But I believe that for all of us, the resources can help us with language and teaching and case studies. We still would welcome your help as communicators in the room to help us add to the guidebook to make it even better. So we now are inviting you to send to me, and that, I think you saw my email there, any case studies, photos. We're also going to have photos there, resources, anything that you think would be helpful for other communicators. And we would add it, and at some point in the during season of creation, we'll lay this out and put it out. It'll probably still be digital so we can access the links and have a resource that we offer the world, the Catholic world and the non-Catholic world. So I think that's it on the guidebook. And I'll pass it over to Bill and Peter and Stephanie for
Great.
the results of the survey.
I will hand the screen to Peter to share the results of the survey. Hopefully everyone was able to take that. If not, you can still take it. People who are rolling in now, maybe we can drop that link in the chat one more time, and we'll just look at the results as they stand now. Oh, Peter, you're muted still.
So briefly, we're just going to take a quick look at who's in the room and how 148 of us responded to these questions. So the first one is, what's the role? And we asked people to just identify one, although there might be many that apply to you. And so you can see a quarter of us identify as parishioners, and then a range of other roles that people play. The next, there were a couple of people who selected other, something different. You can see some of those responses. The second question was, how frequently do you receive information? And you can see that a lot of people receive a lot of information pretty frequently, or at least occasionally. The next question was, how frequently do you communicate information out to others? And again, these numbers are pretty high, perhaps indicating the interest that people have in this topic. This question said, how frequently do you hear dimensions of creation care mentioned in homilies? So 37 and 37 is 74% say rarely or never. And in terms of the effectiveness of what we are trying to do, this is a very interesting challenge, because of course, homilies are designed to be built around the scriptures readings of the day. So this is an interesting factor that we can work with. This question was, how effective have Catholic organizations been in communicating about creation care concerns? So the not effective, not very effective, and ineffective, adding up to 45% is certainly a concern. And I think the question of what makes communications effective is certainly a rich one for discussion. Are you interested in staying connected? So many people are, and you'll hear more about this coming forward later. And then, what resources would be most helpful for you in communicating about creation care? Now, again, this there's 150 people who have answered this, so there's a lot of items, but we'll just take a quick look what's here just to see what some of the issues are that people have raised. This person had a very long response identifying 4 audiences and then for each one specific areas. So deniers, highly interested but don't know what to do, people who are aware but busy, and then children and teens.
I think one of the things that really stuck out to us while we've been having these conversations in the working group is that a lot of these resources that some of us would say we wish we had, others of us would be like, oh, well, that exists. Here's where it is. And it kind of, the results in the survey kind of speak to that disconnect where we feel like we are sending out these communications, but they're not being effective. For some reason, people either don't know they exist or they're seeing them but not realizing like how this could be effective with a larger group. So we really hope that this guidebook with the strategies in it can maybe help with some of that in terms of us feeling like as communicators, we're doing the work, we're creating the resources, we're making the multimedia materials, but they're not getting into the hands of people who need them. So I think that's really one of the roles that communicators play in spreading this message of Laudato Si.
I think that's a great point, Stephanie.
Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to pop the slideshow back up here. The next thing we're going to do is take 10 minutes, which I know doesn't sound very long in the grand scheme of things, but 10 minutes to break into some breakout groups and discuss this question of a communication challenge you faced in the area of creation care and how it was resolved or how it wasn't. So the groups are going to be, I don't know if everyone will be able to share a very long story, but hopefully you'll be able to share at least a little bit and together think about which one of these you want to bring back to the group. So the question again that we're asking you to answer is, when was there a communication challenge for you in the area of creation care, and how was it resolved, or why wasn't it resolved? We'll ask for one person from your group to be the reporter. So decide that when you first get into your group, and the reporter then will give a 1-minute summary back to the large group after the 10-minute session. So each group will have 1 minute to share your challenge and how it was resolved. We would also love it if you want to share more in depth in the chat about what was discussed, or if you could share with some of the ways of staying connected we're going to talk about later, or back with Elena at the Catholic Climate Covenant. Just knowing the challenges that we've faced in our different areas and how others have resolved them is something we can really offer to each other here. So if you, I'm not seeing anyone who put the ES for a Spanish small group in their name. So I think we'll just go with the automatically recreated groups. There's going to be about 15 people per group. And so it is 4:30 now on the dot. So at 4:40, we'll call you back to this main group to report back.
And we really are asking, we recognize we're asking a lot of the reporter. So anyone who has an idea that doesn't get reflected in what the reporter is able to say, please do put it in the chat and we'll make good use of it. But the first task is picking your reporter.
And welcome back as everyone pops back in. We'll wait the next 30 seconds for those who haven't come back yet. All right, everyone should be back in the main room now. I know that was a great task to accomplish in just 13 minutes, but thank you. I trust you all had really great conversations. We will take the remainder of this hour to report back to the group. Please try to keep your verbal reports back to the 1 minute mark. And if we ask you to stop there, that's just why. We're just in the interest of time, but do share more in the chat or share more after the workshop today that we can populate through our networks. So group 1, if your reporter would like to share.
I'm actually not sure what group.
How do we know which group is which?
If it was not labeled for you, then I guess we'll just go by who would like to volunteer to go first.
I know Fran was the
12 groups, so.
Fran was the reporter for group 2. Fran, if you'd like to go.
I'm just making my notes now, but one problem was just trying to focus on climate change amid so many other social justice issues. And we mentioned that the Sisters of Mercy have got a great graphic showing how climate is an umbrella issue, and there's so many other things, immigration, environmental justice, communities, et cetera, that would fall under that. We also had problems with communication within diocese. Some of us actually had a connection to the diocese, so we could send information out to each parish pastor, but we needed help with messaging so that the pastors would actually read that and that would be translated into action. And we mentioned the problem of pastors being faced with the problem of politicizing the message, and maybe even in some cases not necessarily mentioning climate change, but trying to build on taking care of God's creation and having the same outcome, but maybe crafting the message to the audience was very important. Question of how we raise the bar, and starting with something like recycling and trying to move forward and increasing the participation without making people feel guilty that they can't do everything. Let's see, and also in trying to work with students and trying to get that message shared in a parish. And a suggestion was to have the kids make a video and put it on Facebook, and at least the parents would see it, which is not a bad strategy.
Fran, I need to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Because and as a fellow Bostonian, I'm sure you won't be offended. But let's go. CJ, I think we were group 1. Are you ready to give your report?
Can we get rid of the small group sharing screen?
Sure. There we go.
There we go. All right. Or anyone, any one of the reporters from any of the groups.
Sorry about that. I'm just asking if dang it, I got all this feedback. Hold on.
If you're not speaking, if you could just remember to mute.
So it seems to be like I logged on twice or something. So could we get that graphic from the Sisters of Mercy shared, a link to that? That'd be really awesome. So I think we talked about a lot of different things in our group. One of the things was, do people read what we're writing? And a couple of solutions were to make limitations on word count so that you're writing something short. And another point that I raised was taking some courses in how to write in plain language to make sure you're giving people just what they need to know. and so they can understand it and act on it immediately. We had an issue of that the older members of the church and some of the members of the church are resisting, and they're only open to hearing their own views, and they're denying climate. So the solution was around trying to impress on them the impact of the storms and things that are happening, and how that's connected, and linking them with scriptures and science that they would care about. Another difficulty was being unable to portray sense of urgency. We didn't discuss a solution for this, but I have an idea that I want to create a film that takes the IPCC reports and makes a short animation to sort of project forward how things are going to change in like 3 minutes for you. One person said that just one person in the community being passionate, a couple people said that, and I'm a non-busy person. One single person can make a big difference, and getting grants to work on things can make a big difference. So you can get grants to make signage that helps educate people when they just happen to be on the site. And somebody else mentioned using other technologies like apps, like there's something called, I think it's called iNatural or iNatural something, that you can integrate your green space with apps that people can use to learn about the natural environment. So
CJ, we're going to have to leave it there, I think.
Yep, those are some of the things.
Thank you. Another, doesn't matter from which group you are, another reporter, just go ahead and speak up.
I'm from group 4, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I'm telling my story because we thought the idea was just to come back with one specific story, and I got the nomination. And this sprang off the back of other experiences as expressed, and it's the challenge of getting the parish to cooperate. And I said that because I'm a Jesuit parish in Sydney, the priests were great, but the CEO is a climate denier. And we had to find out how to work with him. And in the end, we worked around him, even to the point where we publish our own bulletin now on ecological stuff. But the key message I wanted to give back was that within this context of communication, we recognise that climate change was really right there in the centre of the toxic state of public discourse. How do you actually speak to people? And we spent a lot of time studying this book called I'm Right and You're an Idiot, which was inspired by the great David Suzuki, who at a dinner party in Canada asked the question, if the science is so overwhelming, how come so many sensible people don't get it? And that book is so fundamental in terms of the need to establish trust and relationship and all of those things before you start talking church and theology and all of that. And
Michael, we're gonna have to leave it there, but please elaborate in the chat. Next reporter.
This is Joyce. I don't know our number, but we have some very good things. What happened is someone said that the pastor had been there 7 years, but because of the political, and it's a conservative place, he doesn't want to offend anyone. And then someone gave a solution to say, what about prayers of the faithful, to be able to include those? And yes, that is being done, as well as some quotes from into the bulletin from Laudato Si. Another was, how do we know that when we put something out that people are really receiving them? How are they received? Does it make a difference? So somehow we didn't give more answers to that, but feedback is missing. Then we had someone talking about the politicization, right and left, conservative, and that everything is a little bit political. And so we also needed some kind of intellectual assimilation. And what they're using there in their place is that if the indigenous people are working with it, but there's some hard feelings about the church, and it's either lack of representation with that. Another ended up saying that they live in a farming community, and while that's good, and the readers of the newspaper, they would be divided, just as it would be with most things. So some are favorable, but some are actually deniers. One suggested that a 30-minute film called The Other Side of the Hill, I don't know its resource, but The Other Side of the Hill would deal with a rural area.
Joyce, we're going to have to leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Next reporter. And if you've got a particularly compelling situation or solution, it's fine to focus on just one. You don't need to represent everything that happened in the room.
I don't know which group number we are, but one of the people in our group said that she had been putting out in her bulletin, parish bulletin, a small section that she titled Catholic Social Teaching Moment or something like that. And she was getting phone calls and texts and emails criticizing her. She decided to change the title to Living Our Faith and putting the same information basically out. And all of the phone calls and nasty texts went away. So just by renaming what she was doing, people were taking the connotation a negative way for some reason.
Interesting. Yeah.
Wow. We had in our group a number of trash picker-uppers, I should say. And that action of going through neighborhoods and communities and picking up garbage allowed photo opportunities and a physicality that was widely accepted as being a good thing. And I think that speaks to the nature of what our physical communication is. We have to go for quick wins, and we have to be very visible in doing it. That Zoom presentations and speaker presentations, we may not be ready for. We've got to engage people in our communities where they are with what they see and start there. And with
Thank you, Adrienne. Yeah, Susan.
Yes, a lot of the same challenges, but one of the key things that came out of our group was how to integrate Laudato Si into a lot of the everyday activities of the parish or the organization. And so some of the solutions involved that, and looking at ways to integrate the message to communicate better with parishioners. And one of the people in our group spoke about forming a new team called the Ignatian Advocacy Team, where it was part of the social mission program, and they integrated this Laudato Si as part of that message. And then we talked a lot about intersectionality to find how that was important to achieve integration, and trying to tie it into different approaches within an organization. So looking at prayer, looking at education, looking at awareness, looking at advocacy as a multi-pronged way to find a connection amongst various aspects of the parish group or the organization. And one of the interesting things was one group is starting right at the beginning with doing a book study of Laudato Si. So they're trying to just start at the beginning and make sure that they have a group discussion on that and get to a really good solid understanding.
Thank you, Susan. Let's go to Jill.
That was group 8, I believe. The Sisters of Providence set a really ambitious communication goal of a monthly blog and action alerts and other things. And they had a lot of turnover of membership. And so they had to continually be making sure that all of these points were covered, but they did it, which is really cool. Another concern was the quantity of emails that we all get concerning this. And the solution that this person found was they narrowed it to 3 good sources. This was around the time of the elections, and getting good information about the politicians and their stance on climate change. And so they narrowed it down to 3 and then provided additional resources to thin the herd a little bit. An unresolved issue was when the bishop of a certain diocese was asked how we could address climate change issues. The bishop did not feel that this was a priority. So that one was unresolved. And then we sort of went on a little tangent talking about some positive examples of the Archdiocese of Atlanta, of Chicago, and in New York seem to have some really strong programs on the Laudato Si platform that we might be worth looking at additionally. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Carol.
I was in group number 10, and we actually had some people from Atlanta, and their strategy, I mean, because they were Atlanta, New Jersey, me, Texas, we have in our group, in our area, a lot of deniers and maybe moderate conservative people that just don't think this is important, a priority. And so the solution in Atlanta is they wrote the first action plan. What are they going to do? And the success was when they talked about life, that they talked about the consistent ethic of life, which also would include the abortion issues, which was sort of a stopping point, you know, whenever they tried to do it without it. So a consistent ethic of life. And then also focusing in on, for people that are sort of deniers, is talking more about care for creation rather than climate control. And it seems like this conference is talking about care for creation, and it seems to be very successful. Also looking and talking about the pollution aspect of care for creation. And then also, this was interesting, focus on things that they can do, caring for the creation that is going to save them money. Solar panels, LED lights, things like that. And go with the champions versus deniers. So focus a lot of your efforts on the youth and the young adults who are already believers. And then highlight that Catholic scientists were the scientists in, you know, in the past centuries. They are all saying that this is a major issue that we need to focus on.
Thank you, Carol. Keith.
We had one participant say that the Zoom world has made it difficult. She found it difficult, that she was not sure getting feedback or commitments seemed to be more difficult. And she also found a lot of challenges finding information on climate. It took a lot of time. And one of our group was able to offer something for that. One participant said that a visual image could be effective to get people interested. And one participant said that they asked the pastor to talk about climate change, and again, they were uncomfortable talking about it or did very little, but they managed to get some information into the bulletins, and hopefully people are reading it. My particular experience is that COVID, our newsletter went away, so now everything's on a short e-letter, which doesn't cover much, so that's kind of a challenge. And that's my 1 minute.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Anyone else?
Sure, I can go real quick.
Sure.
So we had a few issues, but similar ways to overcome those issues. So a couple of the issues that were highlighted were how this is a very political topic. It's a complex topic, and as well as there's both sides where in some of the communities we represented, that they were very conservative communities, or a lot of people worked in the oil industry. So this was a topic that is not wanting to be discussed with them. The solution that we had discussed was to find your allies, to keep chugging away, get the little wins, and keep pushing onward. And going back to what Pope Francis says, that we can't do it alone, we have to find a community. So to find those who are willing to listen and work with them.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. I know probably all 12 groups didn't get to share, but I see a lot of sharing going on in the chat, which is awesome. We are going to take a quick break. We want to give people time to, you know, get up, stretch your legs, get a drink of water if you need to. So we will take a 5-minute break. And then if you are hanging around, feel free to keep chatting in the chat. and we will launch into our panel when we get back.
Anyone who wants to join a campaign to make every parish a green power plant, see my email address in the chat.
I cheated and took a break earlier. I couldn't wait, so I'm hanging around. You notice I've changed my background to my Green Between. I have a website, Green Between. You don't heat above 55, you don't cool below 85, you greatly reduce your carbon footprint. And yes, if you're like me, unless you're a lot tougher than me, you're going to be wearing a coat and a half during the winter inside and the gloves without the fingers when you're at the computer. But it makes a huge difference in your carbon footprint.
Check out Think Twice, not Think Twice, Think Twice online. You can get it, you can put it on the top of your toilet. It will help you to save water.
Tell me about that. I'm the one who I'll have the buckets from the sink and things like that and dump them down, but I haven't heard about the.
Oh, okay. It's a plastic thing. I'm 75. I installed it myself. And you connect up the tubes inside. You use the toilet, soap up, depress the flush, whatever, and the clean water, some of it is deflected and it comes out this faucet on the top. And there's a grill so that the water goes through the grill into the tank. So you use that water, clean water, and you rinse off and it goes into the tank and it becomes part of the next flush. So you do not engage with the sink.
Okay, so you basically, the water you're using for washing and all is going into the back of the toilet tank and then used to flush.
It becomes brown water.
And that's the way they do it in Japan.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of it again? Because I think my visualization isn't perfect, but I bet if I go online, I can see it.
Think Twice.
Think Twice. Okay.
Not think twice. Think.
Think.
Think twice.
S-I-N-K.
You got it.
Okay, I had not heard about that one before. Because I kind of think in terms of if I'm not using the water twice, I'm not, I'm not getting, it's not doing its job.
Hey, Don, when you said,
I'm going to share in the chat a short animation.
I'm not hearing anything.
Can you hear me now?
Try it.
Okay, you said don't cool above 85, don't warm below what?
55. And now, if you're a centigrade person, because, hey, this is a global problem, not a US problem, it's 13 and 30 for centigrade. It used to be 60 and 80 when I was taking care of my 90-year-old mom and found out, yeah, old folks can do this too. But then when I start thinking a little more globally, I realized 60 and 80 doesn't translate well to centigrade. So that's where we came up with 55 and 85.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And it's
right.
huge.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing about some of these great resources. You can always drop links or names of things in the chat for people to look up later. We are going to jump into our panel now, as long as Bill is back. Bill, are you here?
I'm here.
You're here? Okay, great. For the panel session, we have these 4 folks. I'm going to hand over to Bill to get us started.
Yes, what we're going to continue in the same vein, and I found that both the challenges and the solutions or lack of solutions really reflect a lot of what we've tried to address in the guidebook. So hopefully you're going to find some resources there that will address some of the issues that came up. But we're going to ask our panelists to briefly introduce themselves and to basically do what each of you have done in the small groups, to tell us briefly the story of a communications challenge that they faced and what they did about it. So let's start with who's first on our list, Stephanie.
Well, you can all go in whatever order you'd like, but we have Alexandra first.
Yeah, Alexandra.
Sure, well, I'd be delighted to start. And thank you everyone for all of your sharing and your insights. It's been so great to listen to all of you today. My name is Alexandra Carroll. I am the Communications Manager for Social Mission with the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And I work specifically in the Department of Justice, Peace, and Human Development, which is a mouthful of acronyms, as you all know. So I work mostly with all of the justice and peace initiatives of the conference, and that includes our environmental justice work and our anti-poverty work. So those are the two places in which I find myself engaging with creation care, engaging with our call to care for God's creation, and really trying to help people to think about that. And I think a lot of the challenges you all shared are ones that we face as well at the Bishops' Conference. And my biggest lesson that I would share with all of you is that through my various years as a communicator, through all of my training, I think the biggest thing I've taken away is that as a communicator, our role is to help people engage in authentic encounter in a space that is most often digital, in a space that is most often polarized. And so how do we help people to hear the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor in a way that impacts them, in a way that is not just a teaching in a document, but in a way that really impacts their lives? And so for us, we're always looking at not necessarily trying to promote Laudato Si outright, although that's always our goal and that's always the secondary promotional tool, but really looking at how does the changing climate impact people's communities? How does the changing climate impact what's happening in my backyard, in my church, in my family, the poor and vulnerable in my community? So really looking at pulling it away from what is so divisive and looking at how can people themselves, how do they engage with this issue? And how can you use that as a way to get people to talk about the issue, to come at it from a different angle, and to really sort of begin this conversation in a way out of our faith? So that's my biggest takeaway. And I'll pass it on to my wonderful colleagues, but I'm excited to talk some more with you all.
Thank you. Carrie.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. I am Carrie DeLaMoliere Scott. Yes, my last name is quite a mouthful there. But I am the campaign content manager with Catholic Relief Services. So specifically what I am responsible for and within our division is working with Catholic institutions, Catholic schools, individuals, our Hispanic community, really across the United States, to address specific pressing issues that our sisters and brothers around the world are facing. Right now, we're focusing on migration and hunger, but care for creation is really at the heart of a lot of these subjects that we have been talking about today. And I think that one of the biggest lessons that I have learned is, and I guess it's twofold, is that words really do have power, both good and bad. So it is imperative to know your audience, know who you are speaking with. And with that, finding those words that are going to resonate with them. I think someone lifted up earlier that it was the manner of just changing the title of in the blog, and just those simple acts. It is quite astonishing how much of a more positive response that you can get. So even as we continue to move forward in our campaigns and our future campaigns, especially focusing on climate, we're doing a lot of studies in research and message testing with our audiences to see what resonates with them, what kind of language really sparks their interests, because while climate change may not be the language to use, and it might spark a bit of debate, changing climates seems to be one that resonates. And again, like all those negative comments, they kind of dissipate at that point. So really knowing your audience and finding the words that resonate with them is the lesson I have for you.
Thanks, Carrie. Domenica.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm the communications project manager at the Global Catholic Climate Movement. I'm based in Ecuador, and I belong to the global team of GCCM. So in general, we face a lot of challenges that help us grow, because now one of my learnings and something that I always carry out, in my mind, is that communications is like an amazing tool that we have. We have internet, we have social media, we have, email. We have a lot of assets and tools that we can use to try to get to people to share this message. So sometimes what is hard is to understand and learn from which tool I can reach to the audience that I want. So usually what we try to do when, trying to communicate with a blog post or a news or an email or something like that, we try to find the ideal, mean. It could be through social media or just an email, and also try to make a segmentation of the audience that we want to reach. If we want to get to young people, Facebook or Instagram is the best option. Either if we want to get, to older people, we can go through mailing or with a newsletter or a news brief, something like that. And other challenge that we always are facing is in terms of how to share the message, because Laudato Si give us like a very broad vision of the social and environmental crisis that now we are facing. And the challenge is how we can bring this idea to the audience, that making them understand that whatever decision I make, whatever action I take, it will affect the others. It's not just a matter of taking care of the environment, it's not just like that, it goes beyond that. So sometimes having this integral approach, and also the kind of this mixed message, we want to call for the urgency, but at the same time to share this message of hope that we can still do things. So this, it's a whole world of communications around this care for creation. So it's very exciting. I love this, and I'm learning a lot. Actually, GCCM is my first job. I just graduated from university, so has been a lot of times where I'm kind of thinking, okay, what we should do, but always there is a learning. So yeah, there's always a challenge, but at the end, it's the Holy Spirit that gives you, the answer and shows you the way. So yeah, I just want to leave this message that we have a very powerful tool in our hands, which is communications, and yeah, we can, change the world with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Domenica. Ed.
Thank you. Ed Langlois, 30 years in the diocesan press. And when Laudato Si came out, my staff and I, we were just thrilled. They say newsrooms are all progressive. Well, it's kind of true. So we sensed this urgency to fill our pages with stories about Laudato Si. And we burned some people out. Even our diocesan communications director came to us and said, hey, you guys got to give this a rest. You're sounding like an ad agency. And I was a little miffed, but I've come to understand his point. And the way we've gotten around it, and something that has guided us, is to be storytellers and not lawyers. Be storytellers, not lawyers. I have in mind, we're looking for those middle of the road readers, probably the bulk of our readers, and they're not all going to be as interested as others in long outtakes from Laudato Si. I mean, Pope Francis is a great writer, especially compared to popes of the past. But even so, long argumentative things just weren't getting to people. And I honestly don't think my bishop or conservative readers want to hear anymore that the environment is a life issue. As true as that is, it just draws these battle lines. And then you get the people, well, whataboutisms. They say, well, what about abortion and whatnot? And it just doesn't lead anywhere. But what everybody likes and everybody can identify with are stories about people who are doing good. I'm going to try to share my screen here if it's possible.
Sure, 1 second, let me stop mine. You should be able to.
Is that working?
Not yet, no.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
So instead of argumentative things, we found a woman, and we were looking for someone who was a superhero for Laudato Si, and there was this young parish worker who had decided she wanted to live her life without any waste. So we wrote a story about her as if she were a superhero and called her Zero Waste Woman. That got an awful lot of traction on social media. And it was really something that the people couldn't necessarily argue with, because here was this woman trying to live an authentic life. And if we found if we tied Laudato Si to gardening, it got people really interested. We have a teacher in Portland who works at a Montessori school who's he's kind of a Wendell Berry kind of guy, a philosopher farmer. And we would ask him to write columns and write stories about him. And it really helped people out. And so we've had some success there.
Ed, thank you. Stephanie, guide me on the time, but I wanted to go back to Alexandra with an issue that she raised and build on what her three colleagues have said, because I thought, Alexandra, you really hit the nail on the head talking about the importance of bringing the issue home to people directly. The other three panelists have talked about particular audiences and the importance of words mattering for a particular audience. Alexander, from the point of view of the USCCB, how might you, or how might maybe you already are doing this, help people in the field address particular audiences with the kind of messaging that might help?
Yeah, sure. I'll take a stab and invite my colleagues. I'm gonna build on them as well, because I think, Carrie, you're getting really to the point, the key here, that different audiences are going to demand different messages. I think that's something that we forget a lot is we think about, how do I communicate to the young people? Well, that's not going to be the same way you communicate to priests and clergy. We have some conversations with our partners in seminaries, right? And they really prefer the term integral human development. That makes more sense to them than Catholic social teaching. And so how do we talk about care for creation in a way that they see as fulfilled, bringing everyone to integral human development? That integral ecology language, right, is really going to strike a chord with that group. But young people, we know through testing and we know through surveying and just seeing on social media, it's that social justice language, that, climate change, those sort of environmental justice, those key words, which may be polarizing for one group, are going to be really engaging to the younger audience. And that can be a challenge, right? When you're at a parish that is intergenerational and that has people from various different viewpoints. But I think that's where the point that Ed brought up of storytelling really comes in. How do you amplify the stories of those who have been most impacted, of communities that have responded in times of a changing climate? How do you look at, as I said, I think the local piece is really helpful. I think just as much as we need to get people to care about our global family, sometimes an easier entry point is saying, I'm from California, so I often think about the fires that happen every year, now, and it just seems all year round we have fires. And that's something that everybody cares about because it impacts everybody. And so if that's the entry point for people, you don't even have to bring in this language that could be polarizing to some and that, could be engaging to others. If you bring a story that somebody can engage with, so I think the hard part of our job as communicators is really thinking about how to know your audience. And sometimes that takes time. I think, people, sometimes I often feel with my colleagues, I have to remind them that communications is hard. And sometimes, we need to talk through, like, we can't try this strategy, we have to go to this one, or we have to think about who we want to talk about. And it's not just as easy as saying, I want to promote creation care. You really have, it's a science, and it's really something that just is, responding to climate change and responding to the needs of the earth and the poor are important, so is engaging people in that conversation. So I think the first step is always looking at who do you want to reach and what are they engaging with right now? And how can we make this conversation a part of that?
Thanks, Alexandra. I wanted to pick up on something that a lot of you have mentioned too. When I was in the Diocese of Burlington and we had our Year of Creation and our Action for Ecological Justice conference, we had a feedback survey, which I know someone in the small group sharing mentioned, like, we need like reception studies, we need more feedback from people. And we actually got a pretty good turnout on our responses. And one of the things that stuck out the most to me that people shared in their responses was that a lot of the people who came to this have been to a million eco-justice events. We're in Vermont. They had no shortage of like options to go to in recent years, but they said what was different about the conference put on by the Catholic Diocese was that instead of a crisis vibe, it had a hopeful vibe. And that was really special to me. That made me really proud of what our committee had put together. Over and over again in this feedback, they said, this felt hopeful, and that is inspiring and encouraging to keep doing this work. So I know Dominica specifically mentioned that balancing urgency and hope. And I think that really is one of the things that Catholics bring to the mainstream conversation about creation care or eco-justice or whatever language we're going to use. And I've heard that a couple different ways today too. I saw, if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I did see a few come through and I wanted to relay one. It was directed to Carrie, but if anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to. This person's saying that they think the language of living with less is effective, and they haven't seen that a lot, but I'm wondering if maybe this is one of those situations of language where like simple living or like minimalistic living, and with the saints we often hear simple, but maybe of resources CRS might have, or if one of your other organizations has, that connect this idea of like living simply, living with less, which we know is part of Laudato Si, but they connect it, in a way that might resonate with people.
Sure, happy to tackle that. I think what people typically see from Catholic Relief Services communication is that we're focused on our program participants really telling their story versus CRS being the ones telling their story, really letting their voices be heard. But with regards to living less, some of you may or may not be aware of our CRS Rice Bowl program during Lent. And one of the ways that we encourage so we work with our Catholic parishes, our Catholic schools, and then really bringing that to the home is letting parents really go with their desire to pass on their faith to their children through the Lenten pillars of prayer, fast, and almsgiving. So when we look at our resources during Lent, with especially focus on fasting, one of the great things we do is when we focus on 3 separate countries, but we bring in the meals from those countries, and they're always meatless. So we're encouraging people to, on Fridays, eat when you're already abstaining from meats, but to try meals from different countries, but then also to bring those recipes, and we have a full archive, but to bring those recipes into your daily life and not just on those Fridays during Lent. But one that we have found successful is bringing that again to the home so that families together can look at ways that they can live a bit more minimally. So like some things we look at are tech-free days. And if you go on one of your devices, give 50 cents to your rice bowl. And that's just one example, but that's one of the ways that we really try and start with the younger generation and the families to connect to those simple ways that they can start living as children, and then hopefully then one day when they're adults, they're bringing those this activity into their families, and it continues to grow from there.
Thank you. We had another question. Someone's wondering, Alexandra, I don't know if you'll know this or if this is a bigger USCCB question, but do you know if the bishops will be like officially promoting the Laudato Si action platform, or is your office planning on utilizing that in any way?
Yeah, we are absolutely planning on promoting it. We work very closely with the Catholic Climate Covenant, and I know they're taking the lead in the United States. And so we are absolutely listening to our partners there at the Catholic Climate Covenant, and we'll be encouraging bishops individually, of course, to promote in their dioceses, and encouraging our diocesan directors to promote through them as well. And of course, reaching out to our lay network. So we will absolutely be promoting it along with the rest of our ongoing environmental advocacy and educational materials. And I think, you know, the challenge, of course, right, with something coming from the bishops is just, being a helpful force to help promote this good work, and to recognize, right, that subsidiarity is very important, and that each organization, each diocese, each of the 7 different bodies implementing this are going to do it very differently. So finding a way that we can act as partners and act as supporters for that effort.
One thing I found really helpful, so before I worked at US Catholic, I was in a diocese communication office, and if you are wanting your bishop to promote the program, like Alexandra was saying, the individual bishops will be in charge of promoting it in their own diocese. And sometimes campaigns will provide a letter that you can just take to your bishop and say, hey, I would love it if we could send this out from you. Here's the draft letter. They might personalize something in it, but then, they're very busy. They have a lot going on. If you can provide them something to work from, you are going to have a much greater success rate. And if you're local to that diocese, maybe you can even personalize it before you send it over to them, to your local area. And then, they'll make whatever tweaks they want. And you might have a better chance of getting that, out in your local paper or the diocesan magazine or whatever your modes are. Any other? We have maybe 2 more minutes if anyone has a final question. I'm looking here, lots of conversation.
Stephanie, I'm just noticing in the chat how valuable this chat is. A gold mine. Really, Elena, we can capture the chat, right, and share it with participants?
Yes.
Great.
I had a question for Domenica. I think ever since I got to Catholic Climate Covenant, we've been saying we want to do more outreach to Spanish-speaking audiences. So I didn't know if there was any work that GCCM has done with Spanish-speaking audiences, communication-wise, in the U.S. or any tips there. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Elena. Well, yes, actually at GCCM we work in different languages, being as English and Spanish one of the main languages we use. And for Spanish, it's always a challenge because, it goes beyond just literally translating the message. It has to be, shared and changed, and because not usually it's the same interpretation. So what we are usually basing is that, for example, when we do a blog, we usually go to the sources, if we're using a quote from Laudato Si, we go to the Vatican site and search for the Laudato Si in Spanish. So we use the same language and we give, the message, because sometimes a challenge is that we translate something and then it's not the same meaning. But at the same time, it kind of gives you a different vision, because sometimes language is really rich. I love the languages and how you can, the different things that you can try to share in English or in Spanish. So it's really rich. And what we usually do is that we have a translator. Sometimes, of course, it can be hard to find one because sometimes it can be expensive, but you can have a volunteer or maybe do it yourself with the internet tools and, checking with the original translations from the Vatican or from the Bible, depending what you're talking about. And in GCCM, what we're trying to do is to offer all the resources that we have in English to offer in Spanish, so we can be, more inclusive with the different audiences in United States or here in Latin America or, worldwide. And it's really nice because we have different channels in social media or in emails that we have in Spanish. So at the same time, you learn because this language gives you different visions. So maybe an English speaker has a different vision of something than the Spanish speaker. And having this perspective on involving different languages in a campaign gives you more, it makes it more rich, richer because it's more complete. You have a bigger perspective of the different realities, and at the same time, it's important to involve them in your campaign. And it's always a challenge again because it's a different language, but at the same time, it will make the campaign or the action you want to do, it will make more important, and you can reach to more people while doing this action.
Great, thanks, Domenica. Quick question for our final minute here for Ed. I know as an editor, like I have a few writers I know I can go to if I want something on this topic. What would your advice be for, cultivating people who you can trust to speak about this from an editorial standpoint?
I'd probably go right to my Catholic college theology professors and say, hey, any students that are fired up about this who might be good writers, that'd be my first source. And then maybe even the Catholic high schools.
Great, awesome, thank you. So we are going to need to move on. Thank you so much to our panelists and to everyone who shared questions. Again, we'd love to keep this conversation going after the conference, so please do stay in touch. And the way that we can do that is, I know some people don't have Facebook, so if you don't, you can still stay in touch through the Catholic Climate Covenant through Elena and their other staff members. But if you do work in comms, I would also just really encourage you to maybe create kind of a dummy Facebook account where, you don't have to put a picture, you can put some form of your name that is perhaps not recognizable, but just to be in that space and to see how it works in terms of a professional standpoint, it's not a terrible idea. If you are on Facebook and actively on there, we'd love it if you wanted to join our new group. So this is a private group. The only people who will be admitted to it are people who are actually, doing this work. So hopefully that can keep the conversations very focused. And we will carry on a lot of these conversations we've had today. So facebook.com/group/CatholicComms, and hopefully we'll see you all there. Now I'm going to hand it over for 5 to 10 minutes about the campaign that's rolling out. It's very exciting.
Hi there. Or Elena, are you going to do an introduction?
I was Stafford, but that's great. I was going to introduce Stafford, who's wonderful and amazing.
That perfect introduction. I have been so inspired by all of you, and Ed, I hope that the comment about you being an ad agency, you'll be totally thrilled at getting that after you've heard my presentation. I am an agency owner who was hired by the Catholic Climate Covenant to create a campaign that could really speak, to Alexander's point, to priests and young people. The goal of this campaign was to message to all U.S. Catholics throughout all 7 sectors to engage with the campaign for the care of creation in our common home. We chose in our agency that we wanted to kind of not focus on the words Laudato Si as they are in some other countries, not to necessarily talk in the name of the campaign using the words stewards of the earth or care for creation or those things which are so familiar to all of you who are doing the work on a daily basis, but to instead look at our campaign as kind of the bait that will allow you to become fishers of men. For some people, hopefully this will be their first introduction to bring them in. And as a lot of business people say, the hardest movement is from 0 to 1. Once I get them to 1, I'm hoping y'all will take over and bring them all the way through the process and make the world unite in this mission, or at least the US, because this campaign is specific to the United States, where we have stronger calls to action, more consumer messaging, and all of that. So we took the idea of creation as well as symbolism and concepts from the church to create a theme and a logo. So hope you like it. The concept here is we're all part of God's planet and we're all part of God's plan. Each individual piece of the stained glass in and of itself doesn't create a beautiful piece of artwork. But in our design, the idea is that if each sector, each individual, each parish, each diocese is doing their small part, then together we can recreate a beautiful world. You'll notice the day and the night, the stars and the sun, the inspiration of the North Star, the dove of peace, and also the dove of floods. Trees and land and flowers, mountains, the sea, and a fish inside of it. Along the bottom, there are the 7 sectors, the 7 years of the campaign, the 7 days of creation. We showed this to some people earlier and they were saying 7 sacraments, 7, you know, and it became really beautiful to watch the image itself start to have meaning. We've also created individual icons for each of the sectors. The purpose of this campaign is to really draw people in, help them identify where they can do the best work, and then send them off to the various groups that are doing the work specific in their sector. Our distribution channels primarily focus on this website, godsplanet.us, to emphasize that this is the US campaign, although we'd be honored if people in Australia used it too. We will have social media channels specific to the campaign, which will be sharing stories coming out of the various organizations that are doing this work, as well as gathering together the story so that way, if you are working in one area, you might see work that is happening in another. These channels are live. They are just getting nurtured. You'll get some links to them at the end. The next piece is what we are hoping to give to you, to work with you. We'll have an online store where you can download materials for free to use however you want that are designed specific to the campaign, or order in bulk. So if a particular parish wants a bunch of clings, they'll be able to order a bunch. Individuals will be able to order things too. The very small, we've got a pricing that is based on bulk pricing for the whole nation. The very tiny amount of profit that is built into that to make sure that we can afford it all goes back to the covenant in order to help fund more of the campaign. So basically every sticker you buy leads to another YouTube pre-roll ad that hopefully draws more people into the campaign. Again, all of these materials are sending people to godsplanet.us, which sends people to the Vatican's Laudato Si website. But by not using those words, we're hoping to draw people in who are unfamiliar with it. By not using any of the red flags words, we're trying to bring people in who may be deniers or maybe just uninformed. And so it is this idea of speaking with a voice that can speak to our red states and our blue states and on every part of the continuum. We've been pulling together case studies, and there's going to be a link on the website for you to upload your case studies that demonstrate action concerning care for creation. And again, the idea is to be storytellers, to take the stories that are happening and make sure that they are broadcast as widely as possible through our social media networks, as well as the godsplanet.us website. We've also created within that store ways for there to be co-branded participation. So you can upload your logo to print t-shirts that have the logo on it. You can upload your logo to print a flyer that has all of the information about the campaign and leading to godsplanet.us in it. Again, it's not with an eye towards making money off the store. It's to giving you the tools. You can also download the PDF of the flyer and print it out wherever you are, or email it to people as a PDF, which would be a little more Laudato Si compatible. Everything we do is on recycled paper and bamboo materials and sustainably created things, because we want to live the campaign while we are promoting it. What we need from you is to share it widely. There'll be some announcements out. Go and like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Send your case study ideas throughout the campaign. We have a lot of time to fill with a lot of content, and we're very excited about aggregating all of that to tell one Catholic story across all sectors throughout the United States. Identify any needs that you have. You can send those to Elena, and my team is going to design more materials as you need them. If you need something, more than likely another parish does, another organization does. Gosh, it would be great to have a pencil. Whatever it is, let us know and we will make sure that we can create it, or you can download the logo and work with it yourself. And then offer your suggestions and ideas. Again, this is a growing, changing thing that will be working throughout. When Elena sends out the chat to everybody, I'm hoping she'll also send the long form of this presentation so that everybody can see all of the pieces, parts about the campaign. And on that, I am done. Elena, all yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Stafford. Yes, there is so much to share about it, and thank you for running through that. I put the links in for Instagram and Facebook in the chat, and we just want to know this is your campaign. Like, all these materials are free, and please use them. We've come to the end of time. I'll let Stephanie or Bill close us out, and I want to thank you and Stephanie and Bill for your amazing leadership these past few weeks, and I'll let you thank the working group.
Thanks, Elena. And thank you to everyone who was on our working group. So their names and their affiliation is listed here. These people dedicated a lot of time and energy and expertise over the last 6 months to help us pull this guidebook together and think about what we could offer you today that would really be useful, and how we can continue this conversation going forward. So we're really, really grateful for all of the different areas of expertise within the comms world. Bill, did you want to add anything?
Well, I would just say that 2 hours in, late in the afternoon, that we have 141 people hanging in there on this topic, I take as very encouraging news. And I look forward to meeting up with you in the Facebook group or anywhere else to continue this good work. Thank you so much for taking part today.
Yes, thanks everyone. Please, we'll see you in the Facebook group, and have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.